A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. Hello, and welcome back to MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. This is your host, Trina Laird, and today's episode is one that many of you have asked me to do for a long time because it's one of the most disturbing parts of the bomb drop experience. And it's the moment you realize that the person you loved, the person who once comforted you, protected you, raised children with you, built a life with you, is now capable of hurting you without any remorse. And you know what? Not just hurting you, but destroying you, and sometimes seeming completely unaffected by it, possibly even enjoying it. So we're going to talk about what happens when somebody's conscience appears to totally disappear during that midlife crisis that they're having. And then we're going to talk about the personality disorders and pathological traits most associated with lack of empathy, remorse, and emotional accountability. Because some people in midlife crisis temporarily begin behaving in shockingly narcissistic and emotionally detached ways. But we're also going to discuss something else, and that is sometimes the bomb drop is not just a crisis, sometimes it's the collapse of a mask, as we know. And in some cases, the affair partner may also have severe emotional pathology, including traits associated with personality disorders, emotional dysregulation, manipulation, sadism, or even predatory behavior. And as always, this episode is educational and opinion-based. It's not a diagnosis of any individual. Personality disorders exist on spectrums, and only qualified professionals can diagnose them. But we can talk about the patterns today, and some of these patterns are devastatingly real. So one of the most traumatic parts of the bomb drop is not just the affair, it's not even the abandonment, it's the emotional coldness. And listeners describe it the same way over and over again. Things like, he looked just through me. She smiled while I cried. He acted annoyed by my pain. She rewrote our entire marriage. They lied without blinking. They acted like I was the problem. They destroyed the family and then acted relieved. These are things we hear again and again and again and again. The pattern is uncanny. And this is where many left behind spouses begin asking the questions like, did I ever truly know this person? Do they even have a conscience? Are they mentally ill? Why don't they care? Because what they're doing is totally not normal. Normal empathy says, if I hurt someone I once loved, I should feel something about that. Guilt, regret, conflict, sadness, compassion. But you guys, during severe MLC, especially when it's fueled by fantasy, infatuation, limerence, narcissism, addiction, or emotional collapse, many people enter what feels like a psychological shutdown. Their own emotional discomfort becomes the center of the universe, and everyone else becomes collateral damage. And if you're listening to this show today, I know you probably feel like you're collateral damage, you and your family. And not every person in midlife crisis has a personality disorder. And not every MLC'er is a narcissist or a psychopath. But many experts, therapists, and family members observe something completely undeniable. And that is, during the crisis, many begin behaving more narcissistically. And why is that? Well, it's because the crisis often involves identity collapse, emotional regression, escapism, entitlement, emotional impulsivity, avoiding shame, blame shifting, emotional dissociation. The person becomes consumed with their happiness, their freedom, their needs, their truth, and their reinvention. And the spouse, the children, the family, they become total obstacles to that fantasy. And that's why so many MLCers suddenly speak in bizarrely cold phrases like, I deserve this. Don't you want to be happy for me? I need to live my truth. I haven't been happy in years. I need peace. I'm finally choosing myself. Well, meanwhile, the family that they built is standing there emotionally bleeding out. And the most disturbing part, the MLCer often minimizes the destruction because acknowledging it would force them to confront shame. So instead, they detach from empathy and just know this is not by their choosing. Their brain is just doing this. They just are not functioning like somebody who's not going through MLC. And you know what, you guys? There are people with or without a midlife crisis who consistently operate with impaired conscience, impaired empathy, or maybe pleasure and domination. And this is where we move into pathological personality structures. And again, these exist on spectrums. Not everyone with these traits is abusive. Not everyone with a diagnosis is going to be dangerous, but some patterns are associated with profound emotional harm. And we will begin with narcissism. People with strong narcissistic traits often lack emotional empathy, objectify people, they use others for validation, they rewrite reality, they blame shift. Oh boy, do they love Darvo. They exploit emotionally loyal partners, they become enraged when criticized, and they require admiration and control. And one of the hardest truths for many bomb drop survivors is that the narcissistic individual often does not experience relationships the way emotionally healthy people do. The relationship may have been less about mutual love and more about their regulation. As an empath, you probably stabilized them, you validated them, you grounded them, you managed their image, and you supplied emotional energy. And when that narcissistic collapse or midlife crisis collapse occurs, that's when they may discard the very person who helped hold them together. And that's not because you lacked value, but because you knew them too well. You represented accountability, history, reality, aging, responsibility. The affair partner, meanwhile, often represents fantasy, admiration, escape, novelty, validation, reinvention. So, there's also another dynamic often seen in chaotic affair situations, and that is borderline traits. All right, so now let's discuss another dynamic often seen in chaotic affair situations, and that is traits of borderline. Individuals with severe untreated borderline pathology may struggle with emotional instability, abandonment fear, identity instability, impulsivity, threats of suicide, idolize, idolizing their partner and then devaluing, idolizing and then devaluing, intense dependency, total rage, and manipulation that is rooted in panic. And yeah, some affair partners appear to fit this profile, especially when they attach to somebody really super fast. They become obsessive. They isolate the MLCer from friends and family. They create emotional chaos. They portray themselves as the victim so the MLCer can be the hero. They threaten self-harm and suicide. They create this total us against the world type of dynamic. And that little MLCer, they become trapped in this trauma-bonded rescue fantasy. He feels needed, wanted, desired, and important. And in many cases, both individuals begin emotionally feeding each other's dysfunction. The affair becomes less about love and more about mutual psychological instability. One person supplies validation and the other supplies rescue. And together, they can become deeply destructive. And now, when they're deeply destructive, now we're entering darker territory because some individuals do not merely lack empathy, some appear to derive gratification from emotional domination, humiliation, triangulation, smear campaigns, provoking jealousy, watching someone beg, creating chaos, causing total emotional confusion. And this overlaps with malignant narcissism, antisocial traits, psychopathy, and even sadistic tendencies. And again, these are clinical concepts, not just casual little labels. Many survivors describe the same chilling realization. They say afterwards that they feel like that person enjoyed them suffering. And that realization changes people forever because really, healthy humans typically do not enjoy watching someone they loved collapse emotionally. But emotionally predatory personalities often experience power from that emotional control, excitement from deception. They get stimulated from secrecy. There's ego gratification from a conquest. And of course, the pleasure from winning. And that's why some affair partners taunt the wives and husbands. They mock children. They engage in smear campaigns. It is not normal empathy, you guys. It is domination psychology. And many of you listening are not just grieving a divorce. You may be grieving psychological shock because your nervous system cannot reconcile that. Like, how can someone claim to love you for decades and decades and then behave without a conscience? How can they do that? That contradiction creates trauma, especially when the person rewrites history, frames you as being abusive, lies to others, abandons the children, withholds empathy, moves on instantly, and they appear euphoric during your devastation. Your brain keeps searching for the old person, but the old person that you knew and loved, they may be buried beneath that. They may be buried beneath the crisis, the pathology, the addiction, the fantasy, buried beneath the emotional collapse. And they have narcissistic defenses, dissociation, and shame avoidance to deal with it. So some listeners eventually face a brutal possibility that maybe this person always lacked certain emotional capacities and the mask simply dropped under stress. And it's so hard to know if somebody that you were with had those tendencies prior or if it was just part of their MLC. And we'll be discussing that again today and in future episodes because it is really super important to know the difference. Now, let's discuss the affair partner dynamic directly. Many affair partners are not mentally ill. Some were manipulated, some were lied to, some eventually became victims too. But others knowingly participate in destruction, and some appear drawn to attach people precisely because it boosts their ego. They enjoy competition. They feel powerful winning. They lack empathy for the spouse. They romanticize rescuing broken people, or they themselves have severe attachment pathology. In some cases, the affair partner and the MLC'er become psychologically fused through rebellion, shared victim narratives, fantasy bonding, and mutual emotional dysregulation. And together, they can become shockingly cruel because dysfunction amplifies dysfunction. And one of the hardest truths for survivors is that you cannot love someone into having a conscience. You can't sacrifice enough to create empathy in another person. You can't heal someone who enjoys deception. And you sure cannot save someone committed to fantasy over reality. That realization, you guys, is devastating. But at the same time, it's freeing because many left behind spouses spend years and years trying to explain the morality, awaken empathy in the partner, appeal to history, remind them of the children, trigger guilt. We all want to rescue the person that we once knew. Meanwhile, the MLC'er may be psychologically incapable of reciprocating emotionally healthy attachment. So, to the Bomb Squad listening tonight, if you've experienced this kind of emotional cruelty, please understand your shock is normal. Your nervous system expected conscience. They expected somebody to have humanity, attachment, remorse. And when those things vanished, it completely shattered your reality. But someone else's lack of conscience does not define your worth. Their deception does not erase your love. Their emotional sickness does not invalidate your humanity. And one day, many survivors reach a powerful turning point and they stop asking, how could they do this to me? And they begin asking instead, what kind of person do I want to become after surviving this? And that is where healing begins, not in understanding every pathology, but in reclaiming your own conscience, your own identity, and your own peace. So this is MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond, and to anyone out there trying to survive emotional cruelty that never should have happened, you are not crazy, you are not weak, and you are not alone. Until next time, protect your peace, trust your instincts, and stop chasing the blast. This is Trina Laird, and I'll see you soon in the next episode. Hey guys, this is Trina, and I want to take a moment to speak directly to anyone who didn't choose the collapse, but is living with the aftermath. When a spouse enters midlife crisis, the damage doesn't unfold slowly. It happens like an explosion. One day you're living a shared life with your best friend, and the next moment, that person that you have trusted and loved for so many years has emotionally disappeared almost overnight, rewriting history, minimizing the damage, and running from the very family they helped build. Friends are confused, the story gets simplified, and the spouse left behind is often expected to handle it quietly, gracefully, all while absorbing the fallout all alone. After the bomb drop, a survival guide for the left behind spouse was written for you. This book doesn't offer platitudes or false hope. It names what others avoid. Inside, I will walk you through what is actually happening when someone runs from themselves, why chasing answers only deepens the wound, and how to stabilize your life after emotional abandonment. In this book, we talk about why these departures feel so sudden and destabilizing. Because, in fact, they are destabilizing. And why the spouse who stays is often blamed, erased, or silenced. Why saving yourself is not abandonment, and how to grieve someone who is still alive while finding your footing again. This book does not promise reconciliation. It offers you guys something more necessary at this time, and that is stability, dignity, and a way forward when someone else has chosen to run after the bomb drop. The survival guide for the left behind spouse is available now on Amazon Kindle in both ebook and paperback. It's also available in audio version on Spotify. And if you're standing in the blast radius and wondering how to survive what you did not cause, this book was written for you. Hey, some resources that are available for you guys are thewifeexpert.com. That's Lori McDermott over there at thewifeexpert.com. She also has a new app out. There's tons of videos that can give you all kinds of information on no matter where you are on your MLC journey or trying to reconcile with your spouse. So check out thewifeexpert.com. And if you're not sure if your spouse or yourself is maybe approaching or in a midlife crisis, be sure to check out Kenda Root's quiz at midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. Again, that's a midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. That's a quick little 2-minute quiz. It's free. So check that out as well. We have a ton of resources out there for you guys. So check them out. Thanks. Hey, if you have a story you'd like to share with our listeners, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email mlcbombdrop@gmail.com. Again, That's mlcbombdrop@gmail.com. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators.